Every Tuesday, Eric would take a trip to his parents' house. They had both passed away 3 years ago after a deadly car crash, but he hadn't had the heart to sell the place. He didn't need the money at the moment, but with his wife expecting and pressing him to sell, he was definitely thinking on getting the process going soon. As he walked up to the house that evening, he heard a weird buzzing sound. He paused to listen to it. It sounded vaguely like an ambulance siren. He walked up to the front door. He unlocked the door, turned the knob, and the buzzing suddenly stopped. Then he heard someone moving inside. He knew he was being paranoid, but he turned the lights on methodically in the house, and there was no one there. Of course there was no one there. This was just being silly, being completely ridiculous. He approached the fridge, and things were lightened up when he found a yuzu citrus-flavored soda he had left there last time he visited. He took care of a few things that needed to be done around the house, watering some plants, for example. He locked up and left. Back at home, his wife, Heather, was asleep, and after changing, he slipped into bed. He was working tomorrow at the hospital. Being a nurse has its ups and downs. Working in the ER strangely becomes routine over time, despite it being completely unpredictable. Sometimes he'd work nights, so his sleep routine could get messy. That night he had a strange dream, where he was at his parents' house in the kitchen. The fridge was full of meats that were not wrapped in Tupperware. They were just sitting in the fridge. There was bloody juice below them. Interspersed with the meats were wild mushrooms. It was night in the dream. There was suddenly a noise in the house, a crashing sound like a glass hitting tile. He walked through the dark house. At a bookshelf next to the hallway that led to the bedrooms, Eric saw a single book, The Bonfire of Vanities by Tom Wolfe. He lifted the book off the shelf, and it disintegrated in his hands. It was fake. It was a paper prop filled with mealy gray paper stuffing. He felt a breath on the back of his neck, and he turned around to see a small, ghostly child floating in the air behind him. He woke up in a sweat. It felt like a 3-minute dream, but it was morning. The sun was out. "Honey, can you grab some flowers from Diamond Flowers at your lunch?" "Of course. Any requests?" "Proteas and baby's breath." "That's the little ones?" "Yeah, those are the baby's breath. Proteas are the weird ones. I want something artsy for when we see KJ and Lana." It was a pleasant week. Work wasn't too crazy. A gunshot wound was surprising, but anything could happen in the hospital. It was just the result of an accident. The patient was going to be fine. Tuesday rolled around again, and Eric found himself approaching his parents' house again. No buzzing noise this time. He approached the front door and noticed a small mark at the bottom of the door. It was sort of circular. Very small. It would have been easy to miss, just like a little piece of chipped paint. He bent down and noticed it was scratched, like a finger had scratched it. What was this all about? This wasn't here before. He opened the door, and the night was really quiet. A cold chill ran down his spine when he saw the same mark inside. But it wasn't really the mark that gave him a chill. There were more scratches around the mark. These were longer scratches, like fingernails had made them, scraping against the bottom of the door. It was probably an animal, right? Like an animal must have gotten inside. I mean, there's no other explanation, really. He was momentarily reminded of his parents' cat. He missed that cat. He would have kept thinking about it if he wasn't so freaked out. He once again searched the house, turning on all the lights, and there was nothing there. Nobody was there. No animals, no people, no nothing. He felt like he was going crazy. He saw the book from his dream on the shelf. Walking through the house, he picked it up. It was just a normal book. The Bonfire of Vanities, Tom Wolfe. What the hell is up with those scratches on the door? He opened the fridge. It was empty. He opened the freezer and found a piece of steak and some wild-picked mushrooms he had left there in the past. Silence. He did the things he needed to do that week and left. At home, his wife was still up on her cell phone. "Hey, hon, did you hear back about that job at the plant conservatory?" he asked Heather. "Yeah, it was a no, but they said they'd keep my resume on file, whatever that means. But Laura told me there would be a job opening up at the botanical garden." "I know you'll get one of them." "I hope so." That night he dreamt he was in his parents' house again. His parents' home was one story, but in the dream there was a second story. And it was dark, and had several strange rooms, with sheets over all the furniture. He wandered around this new part of the house, with a sense of terror, like someone else was there. He felt breathing on the back of his neck again, and closed his eyes in the dream. He woke up in a sweat. Coffee in the morning, and toast, with quince preserves. A list was on the fridge. Dog park, call Lewis, clean van, cut grass, pads, get fish, etc. Work, then sleep. This week was crazy. So many weird patients. A poisoning, cabinet medicines, an infected dog bite, an allergic reaction to a bee, a gnarly broken arm. These were all people, not their illnesses. People. But their illnesses were memorable, sometimes more than the people. Lots of good interactions, but also a lot of not so great ones. A long week. It was Tuesday again, and he was back at the house. As he walked up to the door, he noticed someone had fixed the scratch on the front of the door. It was painted over. The color of the paint was just slightly off. Maybe he'd have to ask the neighbors. As he got closer to the door, the buzzing ambulance siren noise returned. He slowly opened the door. The sound stopped. Nothing. The inside of the door, the inside had been painted too. What the hell's going on? He once again methodically went through the house to look for anything out of place. He turned on and off all the lights. Nobody there, and everything looked the same. He went to the fridge and opened it, and saw something absolutely terrifying. There was a fresh drop of what looked to be blood on the shelf of the fridge, the top shelf. Suddenly he felt a hot breath on the back of his neck, just like from the dreams. He spun around to find nothing. It was quiet. Then he noticed blood on the counter. It was a handprint. He pulled out his cell phone. Then he heard a sound, a mumbled voice. It sounded like a woman, vaguely like his wife's voice. It sounded like someone who was suffering, someone who wasn't well. Impulsively, he put away his cell phone and walked to the dark hallway where the sound was coming from. In the front of the hallway, there was a spot of blood on the floor. Then he saw it. He saw a man standing at the end of the hallway, the same height as himself. It was a fuzzy image. Somehow it was really fuzzy. In a crazy moment of panic, he grabbed the book on the shelf and threw it at the man. The book hit the floor with a thud. There was no man. The man was gone. Just him alone in the house. He felt the breath on the back of his neck, and suddenly felt really ill and dizzy. He turned around and fell to the floor. He landed on his face and broke his nose. Blood on the floor, where he had seen it before. He rubbed his face with his hand. Blood was all over his hand. He walked into the kitchen. There was no longer a handprint on the counter. He put his hand down where it had been, where the handprint had been, and it left an identical print. He washed off his hand and his face in the sink. He walked up to the fridge and opened it. No drop of blood in the fridge. He rubbed his nose with his finger and touched the shelf where the drop had been, leaving a small drop of blood on the shelf. He heard the buzzing noise again, like a siren, and he made a break for it. I have to get out of this house. He left, closing the door. He noticed that the door was pristine. It no longer had that painted over spot. The hell? Two weeks later, he visited the house with Heather. It's time to sell this place. You're right, honey. This place feels cursed. Cursed or not, let's get it sold. The house looked normal except for the dried blood. They cleaned it up. His nose wasn't displaced, and the fracture was healing well. Thank God you were okay. 2 years later, a couple is dining at the house they bought, with another couple who are friends of theirs. So what's the story with this place? I heard someone died here. Yeah, no, it really happened. There was a man and a woman, married. The woman was pregnant. They'd come to see the place for some reason. They were the owners at the time, and they ate a dinner with poisoned mushrooms. Their bodies were found by the front door. Jesus, how morbid, Elizabeth. It's sad. It is sad. The moral is not to eat wild mushrooms, said one of the guests. I eat wild mushrooms, said the other guest. Just need to know if you've got the right ones. Well, I guess the moral is never eat poisonous mushrooms. Later that evening, the wife said to the husband, Did you drink my yuzu soda? No, he said. Huh. It was the next Tuesday that Eric and Heather sat down at the table to enjoy dinner. They were finally going to sell the place. There was a big spider in the corner, and Eric got up and took care of it. They drank some champagne. It was the middle of the night. Nobody could see them, but they were there. Eric knew he had to work tomorrow, so he didn't want to drink too much. But he wanted to celebrate the decision to sell the house. Finally, they were going to sell it, and everything was going to be okay. They had a bright future together.